All right. Before we get started, we put on the website the consultation form. We start recording consultation training sessions and Zoom sessions. This guy looks familiar.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Ziggy.
Yeah.
So fill me in. I just been back to back all morning. I haven't had a chance to read over everything.
Yeah, no worries.
But I'm assuming like general obedience type stuff, or
Specifically leash training.
Yep.
Leash and then eventually off leash.
okay.
His biggest issue right now, or the biggest issue right now, is distractions on walks.
Mm-hmm.
He's very outgoing. And so the issue is, if there's another dog or another human, there are a couple of things that he'll do. He'll either sit and just stay there and wag his tail, and he won't, any sort of like pull that I do, he just resist it. Or, he does this less and less now that he's older, but he used to, try and go over to the person or the dog. And it's gotten to the point where positive reinforcement doesn't seem to be helping the situation.
Sure.
So I just wanted to learn a bit more about e-collar training and how to do it and if it would be a good solution for him. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay. And he's 6 months now?
Yeah, he's 6 months and a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, very common with positive reinforcement, it has you hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
It's the most popular in widespread kind of applied form of dog training because it's fun and it's nice, or makes people feel good to use food to train their dog.
Yeah.
And you can teach skills like sitting down and stuff. I'm not saying you can't,
Yeah.
but it's that once you go out into the real world, it's no longer applicable because now there's more rewarding things to contend with.
Yeah.
So that's why we have aversives. And in order for positive reinforcement to be as successful as they actually tout it to be, is you need to have a dog that's really food driven, really wants to work, doesn't really care about the outside world, an owner that's consistent, an owner that's got good timing, that's willing to put in years of work to get, and I've had very rare, very, very early on in my career, I had a couple that I worked with that had Portuguese water dogs, but they did competition stuff. So dog training was their hobby / life, right? So they had really well trained dogs only using positive reinforcement, but they also did their homework, found like a really good breeder, met the dogs, met the puppies, are these the personalities you need? There was a lot of work put into it in order to get the most out of positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
So for puppies under 6 months, it's a great tool. I use it to build, all the foundational stuff. I use it for rewarding things you want to see again, like potting outside, they can create a positive. It's great for all that stuff. But then, when it's like, hey, sit, when this person says hi, there's nothing saying don't sit.
Yeah.
Right? So where aversives come into play is dogs are physical animals. So if Ziggy did something that another dog did not like, they would nip or bite at him. Right? That's how they correct their dogs. Other dogs, how they correct their puppies. So it does not mean that they're aggressive, because that sometimes people misread that stuff. Because I've been at the dog park before, and the dog corrects another dog, and the other person's like, "Oh, you shouldn't bring your dog. Your dog's aggressive." And I'm like, clearly you can understand dogs because that was a correction, because your dog is acting a fool. So it gets really complicated, right? Because anybody and everyone can have a dog. And in the dog training world, there's a lot of drama, which I'm speaking more on now, that people aren't aware of, where trainers like myself are looked down upon, or we got a lot of people. There's a guy on Facebook that loves to anytime anybody recommends.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, he's always.
It's wild.
Yeah, but the thing is, one, I never say, I didn't even know about this guy until Maddie told me, and I don't care about him. I'm like, because my clients it's clients that are referring me for one. So if I was as terrible as you're saying as I am, then why are people referring me?
Yeah,
right.
Something's working. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just the conception that people have. When it comes to e-collar, so all my dogs or any puppies over 6 months. So I don't know if you saw the lady walking out with her little doodle.
Yeah.
So she's a daycare dog. That's Pretzel. We've been working with her since she was 2 months. She did Zoom puppy with me, And then she comes to our daycare, she did puppy head start, and now she's doing an e-collar, because now she's 6 months. So that little bitty thing is now an e-collar, because she's saying, well, I walk her, she's gonna be off leash, so I need reliability. And same thing, food, of course, even with us, at some point fell short. So, when it comes to remote collar, the reason why I only use that tool now is because it's the most consistent. So we have positive only, we have gentle leader, prong collar, and then we have e-collar. Okay, now there's a lot of other methods, but those are like the primary ones, the most well-known ones. Positive reinforcement, we're looking at single-digit success rate. Okay, because when I'm thinking of success rate, I'm thinking of I can call my dog from anything. From playing, from chasing the squirrel, from running away from a firework. I can make my dog return no matter what. Okay, that's when I talk about success, and that's applicable. Home Depot, PetSmart, Oz Park, in the neighborhood, in a client environment. My obedience is functional no matter the setting. Okay, gentle leader prong collar. Much better. You're in the 40 to 60% kind of success rate. The problem is, once you remove the leash, now we no longer have a means of reinforcement. Okay, so like gentle leader, a pretzel was actually trained on a gentle leader under 6 months. And that goes over the snout and goes around the neck. So it's kind of like a bridle for a horse. Is if you control the head, you control the body. Okay, so it's a great tool for puppies under 6 months. But has no real correctional value. A prong collar is the spiky looking collar that you may have seen on some dogs, which is better because it gives you as much control as a gentle leader does, but it also gives you a correctional tool. So like the dog is jumping, if I pop the leash, it creates a biting motion to mimic a dog bite to deter the dog from doing that again. So like if Ziggy jumped on a dog that it didn't know, and that dog was like, hey, back off, it would bite him and say like, hey, don't jump on me, right? So it's an aversive, but it's an aversive that's more along their language to deter them from doing things. But we can also use it to shape things, okay? And we have e-collar. E-collar, on or off leash, I have a means of control. It also doesn't matter what the person's size is. So like I had a lady who was like 90, maybe 100 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane. Okay, and her dog was dog reactive. So whenever he saw a dog, he would lunge and bark, and he would drag her across the street to get to a dog, right?
Yeah, see, that's the thing with him. Like, I know he's going to be big, and like it's getting to the point even now. Like, he's not reactive in a bad way. He's reactive like he wants to play and he's excited. But if he really wants to go see that dog, like another month, and I'm not going to be able to physically hold him.
Because he has a lot more leverage. Because your center of gravity is here, and his is lower to the ground. So when they start pulling and you start going over. I had a lady. She was 70, or she's around in her 70s. She got a 90-pound Mastiff mix. Okay, I know. And I show up to the first class, and she's picking herself off the ground because her dog lunged after another dog and took her down, and she smacked her face. All this was black. I have another client. Her husband was actually sent to the ER 3 times, and his shoulder broken twice in 2 years because his dog, very friendly dog, would just drag him to go meet other dogs. Okay, so that they didn't want to do anything with him. And then when they would go to the dog park, he would never return. He would just run around in circles at the outside, they had to chase him the whole time. So the life became unpleasant because it was painful to walk him. But then when they would go to the dog park, he wouldn't return. So then they're like, well, if we're gonna chase you for 30 minutes, we don't want to go, right? So they did e-collar. Now the dog does more stuff because they actually have the control. So e-collar is looked down upon just because people don't like the fact that they think that they're hurting the dog. But I'm like, but dogs bite each other, and they also bite people. Like, this is a dog bite. This is from a dog that didn't want to go in the kennel. Right, now I have this dog is actually here today. He's boarding here. And I trained him, in November, December of 2019. And after he got trained, this happened. I was like, don't worry about it, send him back, let me heal up, come back, we'll finish the training. He comes here and he plays and all that stuff because he had never been in the kennel before. Okay, and then he came here for board and train, and I'm like, hey, you gotta go in the kennel here. Right, and he's like, well, I'm not going in the kennel. So he decided to escalate to a dog bite to say like, I really don't want to go in there, right? Because that's how they communicate. They use it as a means of establishing boundaries. They use it as a means of correcting their puppies. They use it as a means of also showing affection, like some dogs will nipple and stuff. So they're very mouth-based. So seeing the physicality of dogs, obviously I'm like comfortable with it because I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the world is, and I sound like a conspiracy person with this stuff, but it's like literally like it's brainwashed to think that you can use positive only and fix stuff with it.
Yeah.
If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many dogs with issues.
Yeah.
And trainers like me wouldn't be around. You know, like because the methods are so effective.
Yeah.
Which is why with recording stuff now, whenever I get little tidbits, I'm like, this is the stuff this is the reality of it. And already going into 21, like you're probably the 10th to like 12th person who's been like positive reinforcement at work.
Yeah, and even him, like as a 3-month-old puppy when I first got him, he was pretty mad. I mean, he was a puppy, so yeah, he was mad to me, but like he'd get to the point where he was so escalated, he'd like put a hole in my dad's hand with his puppy teeth, and when my dad would like tell him no, instead of, you know, being afraid like a normal puppy, he would talk back.
Yep.
Like he, you know, he was like talking back, he was pissed about it, and so we kind of had to get a little stern with him. And it worked. Like I just feel like he's receptive to that, and like he's smart enough to know like if he gets positive reinforcement after he does a bad thing, even though it's separated, I still feel like he does that bad thing, then does the good thing to get the treat. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
like some dogs will play the game.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, he's
They're
playing
like,
the
I
game.
know that this will get me something, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to aversives, it's really just the mentality that's around them. So did you happen to watch any of our training videos that we have up and stuff?
Yeah, I watched some of them, yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing we always teach is the heel. Because almost always one of the things that people want to fix is leash pulling, right? Also for dealing with reactivity, it's the foundation for reactivity. And it also just works really well for teaching what pressure is. So if we were to put an e-collar in Ziggy and just press the button and he felt it, you'd most likely see him try to run off. He wants to run away, he doesn't go into flight response, which means he wants to move. Heel is a moving command, right? He's walking with you. So we use heel, one, because it gives the dog the movement that it wants to alleviate the pressure, but at the same time, it's allowing us to teach them how it turns on and how it turns off, and at the same time, it allows us to teach the heel, which fixes leash pulling.
Yeah.
Okay, so it does a lot of things all at once. Like all this here, see how he's kind of looking around and stuff?
Yeah.
And he's like unsettled. This is what we would call like overstimulation. Okay, so like my dog Lex, if I came in here and sat down, she would just lay at my feet and just chill, right? Now, somebody say, oh, it's because he's a puppy. Doesn't matter. I can have this from a 2-month-old puppy, okay? It's just putting rules and boundaries and consequences. So when he's like, hey, mom's gonna sit down and chill, I'm like, someone's just sit down and chill too.
Yeah.
Overstimulation tends to be a lack of boundaries or rules that the dog understands, okay? Because people say, well, just I tell my dog no all the time. And then, you know, I put him in the kennel and time out all the time. I know, but dogs don't do that to each other.
Yeah.
Dogs don't put each other in the corner and say, think about what you did. Dogs don't give each other treats for things. They don't give each other fluoxetine or CBD, right? If a dog gets out of line, they simply correct them and they bite them. So a lot of the stuff that people are actually missing, you just noticed that, buddy?
So funny.
Is formal consequence.
Yeah.
Okay? So with heel, like last year I had like a handful of cases that struggled with the same issue of overstimulation. This is like the most common issue that I get with the dogs that come in, is because people aren't correcting their dogs, right? They're trying to with like, again, the redirection, the timeout, all that stuff, but since the dog doesn't understand, they're not getting the boundaries, means we're getting a lot of this just kind of movement.
Yeah.
And then once we teach the heel, they'll come back the next week and they're like, oh yeah, all that stuff went away. Because we finally put discipline on the brain, and discipline helps calm them down.
Yeah.
When Pressel just started her class right now, she was jumping all over the place, and at the end of the class, she was just sitting here chill. Because we applied some discipline, and it was able to calm her down.
Yeah.
Okay? So when we do remote collar, we're not trying to make the dog yelp. We're not going like, let's go on 100 and blast the dog. We start low, we work our way up. Have you ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor?
Yes.
Have you had where they put the little probes to move the muscles?
Oh, no, I haven't
No?
done that.
So, it's called a TENS unit, and they put these little circles with like wires, and it moves the muscle. It's an electric current to stimulate the muscle. So like if you have scar tissue, it'll help break up scar tissue on the muscle. If like you messed up your arm, you couldn't use it for a long time, it helps build muscle strength. If you ever watch those infomercials with like the ab machines, you watch the machine to get an ab workout, right?
Yeah.
That's a knee collar. Okay, so the other thing is just a misconception that people think like, oh, if you're electrocuting your dog, you're sticking your dog's your finger in an outlet or something like that. And they go, no, it's just a miniaturized TENS unit. So there's 2 probes that go in the neck, and it moves only the muscle that it's making contact with. So if I put out my hand, you might see my hand twitch, but all of this here, there would be nothing. Okay, so it's just a centralized current. So it's electric, but not electricity is how I explain it. And the reason why it's effective is because, one, I don't have to worry about size, right, of the human. So I mentioned the lady earlier, she's like 90, maybe 100 pounds, 150 pound Great Dane. She was not going to have the capacity to control that dog physically. We needed something that was going to close that gap. E-collar allowed for that. The lady with the 90 pound dog who was 7 years old, same thing. Didn't matter if she was 7 years old because she could go to 100, and I could compensate for that difference, right? So here, every dog's number is different. I don't know what's going to be. Ziggy knows, and then I help you figure it out. Okay. First thing we always teach, of course, is the heel. And then you'll give you your homework, and then you come back and you tell me like what worked and what didn't work, and then just we build on that stuff.
Okay. And he does have like a basic understanding of heel. He knows what it is.
Okay.
I should probably be better about how often we do it. But he's smart enough to know like if he comes next to me, like the positive reinforcement that he'll get. But then as soon as he gets the treat, it's like okay.
Right. So tell me how you taught the heel.
So I guess I started inside, but keep in mind this was probably a month after I had him. So we were already doing walks, and then I was like, okay, well we should probably learn heel. So I started inside, and I would just keep moving like in different directions, and say this way, this way, this way, and then we do it outside a little bit, this way, this way, this way, and then we tried down the sidewalk. And then the issue was if there was a distraction, it kind of just all went awry. So
were you teaching the heel as a come to my side or as a walk with me?
Come to my side. Okay. Yeah, he'd always be next to my side.
Okay. So the way that I know traditionally some trainers teach it that way. They teach it as a come to my side and a walk at my side. And I teach heel strictly as a walk to my side. Okay, because for me, putting 2 things to 1 word for a dog is complicated.
Yeah.
Okay. So for us, when we cue the word of heel, it's you're at my hip and we just say it once and then the dog moves to us. So if I take 5 steps, they take 5 steps, I take 3 steps, they take 3 steps, I take 1 step, they take 1 step. If I stop, they automatically sit. This is a completely slack leash, and again, I don't care what the environment is. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what heel is supposed to be. Is walk my side, cue the word, and you're glued to me until I give you permission to go pee and sniff and roll around and do your doggy thing. Okay. People tend to use heel as like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going to happen now. Now I'm going to use control. When really you would use heel most of the time, but then give him breaks to be a dog.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of like we're walking and it's like, oh, there's a parade of dogs coming. Now I need you to heel. But what happens is you're not practicing the command frequently enough for it to be effective in that setting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Plus pressure. But that's what typically happens is that my clients will say, well, I use positive reinforcement, or I did this, we did our training sessions, but it never worked outside. And I was like, well, did you ever like begin to like practice all that stuff consistently outside?
Yeah.
Right? Bless you.
Thank you.
So once we teach the heel, I always tell my clients, I give them the 80-20 rule. 80% work to 20% play. So if I do an hour-long walk with my dogs, 45 minutes or so would be on my hip. The other 15 minutes would be pee and poop and do the doggy thing, right?
Yeah.
There's more structure than there is free time.
Yeah.
And the more you practice and apply the commands, the more functional or applicable they become.
Yeah, he definitely had more free time. I think my thing was like, oh, he's a puppy, I'll let him sniff and like get out some energy.
Yeah, it's the most common thought process. In my opinion, it's the other way around. Because puppies always, people always excuse puppies.
Yeah.
Oh, they're a puppy, they're gonna bark and they're gonna chew and nip and pee on things and all that stuff. And I go, if you let them.
Yeah.
But there's a very popular video on YouTube, I don't know if you've seen it, with the golden retriever mom.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure it's golden retriever lab, a yellow lab. There's a gate and there's a room with like 10 puppies, but like 2 months old. And she walks in, and they're yipping and barking, and they're going crazy. And then you start to see her curl her lip and growl. and she starts to nip and bite them. And then within 30 seconds, they're all calm and laying down. So she came in and said like, no, you're not going to behave like this when it's time to nurse or when I come into the room. You're going to be calm when I come in, right? And I go, there you go. So, because for us, when we get our puppies, we correct them. We don't let nonsense go on here. We don't let barking and all that stuff. So we have our puppies over here. We get dogs playing here and stuff. And if it's a newbie, like, yeah, they're going to be barking because they don't know the structure. But once they learn the structure, it's quiet. Because we don't allow them to do those behaviors. But people tend to excuse them. But then it ends up becoming a problem because then the puppy grows into a dog with these behaviors being allowed.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. And that actually reminds me too, I've been in situations with him where I'm walking him, we approach another dog, the dog is correcting him, and he doesn't get it. He doesn't take the hint, which is just another thing that it seems to be getting better, but at the same time, like I wouldn't trust him with knowing what to do in that kind of situation.
Right. So that's where e-collar can come in. Because like, let's say you're at the park and he's playing with another dog, and that dog decides like, hey, we had fun, but I'm done with you. And they nip at him, and the dog does like a soft nip. If you were to keep pursuing, theoretically that dog would escalate until a point where they may be a puncture bite in order to get the point across, right? Because he's just hard-headed. So if I see that and I go, okay, you're not respecting that dog's correction, I can use a remote collar to disengage him from that dog. Okay, so like let's say I go to the dog park and there's a dog that shouldn't be there, not friendly, and I see my dog going over to that dog, I can correct them and create a boundary where they go, okay, whenever I try to approach that dog, this goes off. But if I stay with the dog, nothing happens.
Right.
So it gives you much more fine-tuned control, not just obedience-wise, but behaviorally as well, is that you can follow up on the dog's correction if he's not taking to it. Okay, because then you can just follow through with more power and you prevent a potential escalation in the situation.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the most versatile tool. And I know people are like, oh, you took the easy way out. Like, you're lazy, you don't want to put in time for the relationship and stuff like that. I've seen plenty of people who did all that stuff and it doesn't work because it's not about the relationship. It's about telling the dog that you can't do that. And or making them do something, because if they don't, then there's consequence for it. That's what makes things mean something.
Yeah, and I feel like I've tried it, like, oh, we'll get a really, nice treat for him, like, like listen, I've tried everything, and like, it's not working.
Yes. So what would dictate like the amount or the cost and the length of time is simply how much you want to cover. Okay, like how much control you're looking for. So we have 3, 6, 9, and 12. The 3 week is mainly for dogs that are leash reactive. We focus on the heel and correcting reactivity. And then there's 6, 9, and 12. The 6 week is like walk my dog on a leash and recall, because those are the two most important things. The 9 week is walk on a leash, recall, stationary control, and then 12 week is like the full off leash obedience. Now, think of like the 6 week as I walk my dog, we go to the dog park. The 9 week is walk my dog, go to the dog park, go to restaurants. And then the 12 week is all of that stuff, plus you go hiking, plus you go to the dog beach, plus you go to Oz Park, like you be in a lot of unenclosed areas. Okay, so you're gonna be doing a lot more stuff with your dog. There's 6 formal commands in functional family pet obedience. The 2 most important are heel and recall. Okay, so those 2 are always the ones that I stress in the 6 week program, unless the owner just like wants to cover something else instead. Heel always has to happen, no matter what. Even if the owner like doesn't need heel, but we need to do behavioral work, it has to happen because it teaches the dog how it turns on and how it turns off. Once we have that, then we start to build on whatever the owner wants. In most cases, when it comes to obedience, it's heel, 2 classes. The second or the third class would be most likely going into recall, and recall is another 2 classes. And class 5 and 6 is really a variable. Okay, if you've been doing your homework and you're like, hey Jesse, man, his heel is really good, and we're practicing his recall, and his recall is coming along nicely. I go, great. Do you feel good? You're like, yeah. I was like, we're gonna keep practicing. I go, great. What would you like to learn? Right, because that leaves us 5 and 6. So we can also get stationary control even within a 6 week program. It just depends on how much work you're putting into it. The command I usually lean towards is the place command, which is this one here, because it's go here, don't move. It's the easiest stationary command to teach, and that's essentially kind of like the trifecta of dog training. It's walk with me, don't pull. Come when I call you, and don't go here, don't move.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a walk, a come, and then a stationary control. And then there's sit, down, and stay. Okay, those 3 commands are kind of superficial because down, like this would technically be a down, right?
Yeah.
But it's very strict. It's go here, it's do this and don't sit up or stand up. With this, it's go here, and I don't care what you do, sit, stand, or sit, just don't step off. So this is a lot easier for someone to teach and apply than the down is, okay? But the down is nice because if I go somewhere and I don't have this, I still have stationary control.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So a lot of people just do the 3. They do heel, come, and place, and they're like, this is all I need. It's simple and it's functional. I can go to a restaurant with my dog, I just bring a towel, pop it on the ground, I can call my dog to the dog park, and I can walk them without pulling.
Yeah.
And then I get those that just want to go, like the whole 9 yards, and they want to teach all the commands. So the 12 weeks would cover all 6, sit, stay, down, come, place, heel, and we build to off-leash reliability. The 9-week program is, heel, come, place, sit and down, and we even cover the stay as well. It's kind of like in the middle in terms of control. And then 6 is the simplest.
Yeah, okay. How many classes per week are there? 1, okay.
1 class a week per hour, so if you did like a 6-week program, that's 6 1-hour lessons once a week. Some people try to do more than 1 a week. I'll tell them no, because you need time to make mistakes. You need time to practice and learn where he's having problems and stuff. The only time I've ever done more than 1 class in a week was with a client that had worked with me before and got a second dog and was going to travel.
Okay.
But they already knew my methods. So I was like, okay, we're just teaching the other dog. Any other case, I always tell people at least a week between classes. And then if there ends up being a 2-week gap between classes sometimes because of work or whatever, it's not a problem because it just gives you more time to learn how e-collar is working with your dog.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Other questions?
The 6 weeks sounds like it would be a good fit. The one curveball is right now, my roommate has a golden doodle, a 3-year-old golden doodle. And so, they're together all the time. The golden doodle, and I don't know how this affects anything, but the golden doodle has pretty bad anxiety issues.
Okay.
For example, like it's fine inside of the house unless his owner leaves. He's like stressed, like he'll just sit and won't move for however long she's gone. If they go on walks together, which I have a feeling you're going to tell me don't take them on walks together anymore, there are lots of triggers, skateboards, mitten hats, and his reaction is run in the other direction. So he'll pull as hard as he can to run away from the situation. He doesn't seem to pick up on that stuff, but I want to let you know because I just don't know how that can have an impact.
It can't, like, there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
The mind is always assume the worst.
Yeah.
Because right now he's 6 months, so whenever we see behavioral changes, if it's not evident from the get-go, 6 months in a year. Okay, or typically when people notice their dog's behavior change, either in response to a negative experience or just organically on its own. Or like one person, like their dog was 6 months and like they dropped, they would like open their shelf and like plates fell out. And ever since that day, their dog was extremely nervous. It just triggered.
Yeah.
So like the catalyst or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just curious, like I guess and maybe this would, if we move on with the sessions, does he wear the e-collar inside, I guess, and is the training happening
only
inside?
Only when you need it.
Okay.
So let's say outside on the walk and stuff,
Yeah.
because you're going to be using your training, using the heel, perhaps he's going to be off leash, whatever, you need it, it's present. Inside the home, when you're practicing place work or whatever, durational control, going to need it, right? Because now you're actively training or teaching or using those skills. But other than that, if he's a great dog and you don't need anything, then you don't have it on.
Yeah.
It's like my dogs only wear it when they go out and I know they're going to be off leash.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I can't account for life or anything like that. In the beginning, he's going to be wearing it most likely more often because we're doing more training. But within the home at some point, it usually goes away depending on the dog.
Yeah.
In your case, this is a pretty standard, case of obedience and typical puppy stuff.
Yeah.
Is that as he matures, you might find like, oh, within the house, like he's great. but whenever we go out, we absolutely need that collar.
Yep.
Do you drive?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yep.
Do you go the speed limit?
Sometimes. Most of the time. This is on camera, right? Yeah, of course I do.
Almost no one goes the speed limit, okay? And the reason why I say that is because people always ask, when does the e-collar go away, right? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't, because of opportunistic behavior. So for humans, when we're on the expressway, unless we see a squad car, almost everybody goes above the speed limit. As soon as you see a squad car, what happens?
You slow down.
Slow down,
Yeah.
right? Because now there's sort of consequence. Now you might get a ticket. But then when you pass up that squad car and it's no longer in your vision, speed up again.
Yeah.
It's opportunistic behavior. So dogs, and all animals do this, it's part of survival instinct. So like, if there's a pond of water with an alligator in it, the animals around it, if they're aware of the alligator, will not drink water. Once it's gone and they see it leave the water, everybody comes in to drink water, because the threat is gone. Once the threat comes back, everybody disperses, okay? So they're using that opportunity to, of course, drink water. So for dogs, think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, Ziggy's going to behave himself and be much more responsive and obedient. But then when it's off, not so much. Okay. And this is the funny thing about like dog trainers, because they'll argue with each other, and then trainers that use the verses will say like, well, you always have to use food. But then trainers who use food will say, well, you always have to use the e-collar. And it's because no matter what the motivator is, when you remove the motivator, performance dips, whether it's going to be a positive motivator or a negative motivator. Okay, except with the negative motivator, even if the dog's not complying or listening, I can make them comply or listen using the e-collar. Whereas with food, if he's not being compliant, there's nothing we can do to force the behavior.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how this works is, if you're doing your training and you're actively using it and you're applying it every day, in the beginning, you're using a lot of remote. You're really pressing that button a lot.
Okay.
Because you're teaching everything. Now, once Ziggy gets a concept and he learns, like, oh crap, like, mom's strict, and I have to glue to mom's hip, and there's no pulling, no nonsense, blah, 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 is he starts to give you that. So then the remoting becomes less, right? But then, if you took it off, and he's like, oh, I don't feel that collar on, oh, mom can't make me do anything, what happens if I try it? Oh, there's no consequence. I know I can get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so over the course of time, and my dogs, when they have a collar on, it's once in a blue moon I have to press a button. Because maybe like they're walking and a squirrel just zooms straight across out of nowhere, right? So it's so sudden that instinct kicks in right away. But I can boop, just tap, disengage them, we keep walking, right?
Yeah.
It's just the frequency of which I'm using the collar is super low, but it's present. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
So it has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer, has nothing to do with the training methods or anything like that. It's simply opportunistic behavior. Okay? 1 second.
Okay.
She's got the vacuum on, so she can't hear them. Hey, break! Break! Break!
Ziggy. Ziggy. Ziggy.
Yeah, opportunistic behavior. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 Because one of the most really common ideas is you train the dog and the dog's going to be a good dog, but dogs aren't proactive like that. Dogs are reactive. They respond to what's going on within the moment.
Yeah.
So like if he goes out no collar, he's going to react accordingly. I can get away with stuff. If he's got the collar on, he's going to go, okay, can't get away with stuff, right?
Yeah.
Humans are both proactive and reactive. One day, like I've had clients whose dogs took off on them, and they're like, yep, not gonna let that happen again, and as a reaction, found a trainer like myself to do e-collar work to get off leash reliability, right? And there's other trainers, or not trainers, dog owners, who get their dog and just know, I want off leash control, and I'm gonna just make the decision and using the e-collar because I don't want to wait for something to happen. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you can be both proactive and reactive.
Yeah.
So, the colors that we use, I use dog truck, last a really long time. The one, how big are we expecting him to be?
He's a mutt, so honestly, I have no idea. I mean, he was 50 pounds at 6 months.
Okay.
So I'm guessing like 80 pounds.
Okay. He's
80
an
to
interesting
90.
guy because he's got a small little head and he's got.
I know, I can't figure it out. They thought he was a German Shepherd mix, but I did run the DNA test, and you know, you never know with those either. But it was like Lab, Pit, Rottweiler, Chow. Like he just has a lot going on, if that's right. But he's a cutie. He's just, you know, got a lot going on.
Yeah. So
It's hard to figure out.
typically dogs or puppies hit their height at 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and then they fill out. So it's like 6 months they're tall and lanky, and kind of like it for us for teenagers, right? Where the teenagers were tall and lanky, and then once we hit an adult, we start to fill out. Same thing here, except he's short and stocky.
Yeah.
So when I looked at him, I'm just like, and his head's small in comparison to his body.
You should have seen him when he was like 3 months. He was just like huge belly, really short legs.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
So if we're expecting him to be 80-ish, the collar I'd recommend is meant for 70-pound dogs and over.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start off with that, so you're not buying one smaller one and then graduating to a big one, because then you're spending twice the amount of money. It's just more output. Okay, so if he's 50 pounds, you know, it's perfect. Like I could use him on Chihuahua, and he's 8 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
It just means our number's going to be lower.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that one runs about $325-ish with tax. You can get it on Amazon. It's a 1 mile range, fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, they last for years. The most common thing that we see is the battery does die because it's a rechargeable lithium battery, kind of like your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, you know, after a few years, if it's not holding a charge, you can either go on the website and purchase one through Dog Truck for your particular model. They're like 20, 25 bucks, and you replace it, and then you're good to go. Or if it's under warranty, you can simply send it in, and then Dog Truck will exchange it for a new one for you.
Okay.
So like Maddie, I don't know if you've seen her.
Yeah.
She just sent hers in this past week because her battery died, and I worked with her 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So it's been a good couple of years before her battery's given out, and Maddie uses her collar all the time.
Okay.
Right, so that's just something to keep in mind. But other than that, I've had my collars going on 8 years, and I've had no issues.
Okay.
Other than they only last 30 minutes now in terms of the charge and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wanted to just send it in and get replaced, then I would just do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions about that stuff?
No, I don't think so. I guess maybe just like placement on where it's supposed
Sure.
to be.
So here, for the dog, if you imagine this in the jawline, anywhere but here. So we usually go here or here.
Okay.
Okay.
Right under their jaw right here. So it should be up higher.
Correct. So the reason why we go up here is we can get more cross with less power.
Mm-hmm.
Down here we tend to need more power because there's a lot more muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Every now and then I get a dog that's too sensitive here, so then we drop it down low to see if they take to it better.
Okay.
But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Other questions?
I don't think so on the collar, no.
Not uncommon to see after the first class or so. It's gonna bring out like the inner Ziggy.
Okay.
So what that means is, looking at Ziggy here, like the only thing I noted was overstimulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we start e-collar stuff and Ziggy looks anxious. Okay, people go, oh, did the collar make the dog anxious? And I go, no. I'm like, your dog was already an anxious dog, you just never saw your dog under stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Fear, anxiety, nervousness is a stress response. Okay, so like Pretzel, who I would work with, did nothing. All she did was pant, which is a normal stress response. There was no shaking, there was no excess salivating or anything like that. She wasn't wide-eyed, she wasn't anxious, she wasn't fearful, she wasn't nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the owner, this is what I would deem a stable dog, because her response to the stress was, hey, this is stressing me out. But once she understood it, she's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
no big deal. And I get other puppies, like we have Shelby, who's a daycare trained, and she was like trying to run away. And I told the owners, your dog is a fight or a fear response dog, right? So whenever she goes under stress with the e-collar, we're seeing flight, which is part of the process. And then we have to, of course, correct that and teach her, you never try to run away from it. If anything, you run to your owner,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So if you're working with them with the e-collar and you see fear, nervousness, or anxiety, it's not the collar that's making them that way. That's his stress response. And now that we're putting him under stress, correct, now we're seeing that behavior come out. So then, because I always tell people, you want to think worst case scenario. Let's say we're up with Ziggy, and the most common thing that can happen is firework. Does he have anything with fireworks? Okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
We'll use that as an example for the sake of examples. Most dogs are scared of fireworks, right? And their first instinct is always run away, right? So if I know I have a flighty dog and we don't work through it, we have unreliable obedience, okay? Because something in life at some point may happen where he's going to get fearful, nervous, or anxious. So if we don't work through that with the collar, it always remains an option for the dog to either run away or shut down, okay? And then if we're caught in a moment where the dog is running away and I need the dog to return and we've never forced the dog to be compliant while under stress, you're not going to get your dog back, is what I tell people.
Yeah.
Because the dog is running in fear from a potential threat, whatever that firework is. So it's essentially overriding the fear and making them run into it, right? Because if they're going to return to you, they're thinking, oh crap, I'm running back to where the threat is, right? Is you have to have done it in other contexts in order to be successful in that context, okay? So when I train, I may look like I'm being indifferent and not caring, but I'm doing it because those are the stories that I've heard throughout the years where people are like, man, Jesse, e-collar got my dog back because someone threw up a firework, or a car backfired and spooked my dog and they just took off.
Yeah.
You know, random stuff like that, and they're able to just on the fly get their dog returned even while under stress.
Yeah.
Okay? So more exposure is what gets the dog over it. People tend to hang back because they see their dog under stress, they feel bad.
Yeah.
Have you ever been skydiving?
No.
Okay.
I have fear of heights.
Okay. So I guess we can agree that skydiving would be very stressful.
Yes.
Okay. So imagine if you went skydiving once a month, right? It would always be stressful because it's infrequent. Over time, you'd get used to it, right? But imagine if you did that every day, right? You would get over it much faster because you're constantly and consistently exposing yourself to the stressor of hopping out that airplane or whatever, right? Same thing for the dog. If we see the dog goes under stress, people lay off the stressor and they go, no, like you have to keep the dog working through it, guide them in what to do so they learn what the answer is, and then once they learn how to work through it, over time all that stuff goes away.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I cannot make the dog unnervous, unanxious, or unfearful because that's just who the dog is. But we can teach them how to handle it better. So like for Shelby, they wanted to do a straight program, and I said once I noticed that she was a flight dog, I said no. I'm like we're gonna break up the program because you need more time to expose your dog. It's not as simple as a stable dog who we can train and then give them to you and you just work with them in practice.
Okay.
This is the dog that needs to be exposed more, okay? And we won't know until we start training. But with what you would be doing, you would be fine because remember earlier I was like, take a week. Because let's say Ziggy did become nervous and then you have a week to expose him. So by the time we come back to the second week, you're making progress. So it's more prolonged. As opposed to like a day turn training, which is only 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks is a blink of an eye. I'd rather stretch it out and make it be 6 to 10 weeks or something, so the dog gets consistent exposure over the course of time to build up the confidence to it. Okay. From what I've seen of Ziggy and what you've told me of him, I think he'll be just fine. But I'd rather you go into it knowing that, so that this way if you see it, you're like, oh, okay, Jesse talked about this. And
no, I'm glad you said something. I think he'll be fine too, but it's good to know that that could come out.
Anything else?
I don't think so. That I can think of right now. I guess, when he starts e-collar training, do you remove positive reinforcement altogether?
No.
No? Okay.
I also, in the lessons, unless we absolutely need to incorporate it, which is super rare, I just do remote collar. Okay. And then a lot of people either don't even worry about positive reinforcement anymore because they're just like, holy crap, this is so much easier. And actually, if you've already done a load of positive reinforcement and then you stop and do e-collar, it's still balanced because he still has a concept of it. Does that make sense? But the reason why I only do remote is because you're not a dog trainer, right? And to think about the remote, your leash, your dog, the food, your timing.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So that's why I'm like, I don't need the other stuff. I know e-collar alone will get me the results. Okay, adding in food is great. I have clients now that are doing 12-week programs, and once we hit like the 9-week class, I'll tell them we're gonna start incorporating food now because we're pushing for a higher level of training. But they're only using it as a reinforcer. They're not using it like a lure. Okay, so luring and shaping is more complicated for people. But if it's just sit and the dog doesn't feed, that's simple.
Okay.
Okay, so you can always layer it in as a payment, and not have to worry about it as a lure, and just let the remote do all the work, and the food is just there as a reinforcer. So like for recall, I always encourage people for recall when they do a remote, when they're comfortable enough with the exercise, to start pairing in high value food. Chicken, hot dog, bologna, cheese sticks, whatever, because recall is of course like the most important command there is.
Yeah.
So there, I always feel, you want to incentivize your dog a lot to return to you, not just through pressure, but through some kind of reinforcer. But in most cases, a lot of people just do strictly remote.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, I have nothing against positive reinforcement. I just don't rely on it to create reliable obedience.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest challenge I have with him is overstimulation and like different settings. Like if he's playing and it goes too far, if he's outside and he gets excited. So it's like I need to figure out when to identify like it's too much, I guess.
Well, a couple things you may see. One, with remote, you'll start to see a lot of that taper down, because now there's a sense of consequence. Okay, so then he starts to, it's like a bully that bullies, but then gets beat up, and they're like, oh crap, I can't bully like I thought I could, right? So consequence really changes a dog's perspective. So like when I get my dogs that are dog reactive or even human aggressive and stuff, I don't always come and target the behavior. A lot of times you'll hear me say like, let's just add in some discipline and see what does that fix. And then we see what needs to be addressed head on, okay? The other thing is, like, let's say he's playing, you're the adult, right? You're the human. You dictate what is too much.
Yeah.
Don't worry about whether or not he's having a good time. He's gonna have a good time regardless, right? Because people didn't feel guilty. Oh, but he was playing so like happy and stuff, but then when I corrected him, he kind of got mopey and I felt bad. I'm like, no, because you wouldn't have to correct him if he wasn't escalating, which could potentially lead to a dog fight.
Yeah.
Eventually the dog learns, it goes, oh, okay, I can go to a 4, but I can't go 5 to 10. Okay? And it's all just through consistency.
Yeah, him and the golden doodle, it definitely can escalate quickly. And like he doesn't take, the golden doodle has snapped at him, but he doesn't even take it serious. Like he's not afraid of it at all.
Yeah. So you would be the one that steps in proactively. Like either, and ideally prior to that escalation. Because as he matures 6 months and a year, one day there could be an escalation and it doesn't go the way it normally does. So. Anything else?
I don't think so. I'm just excited, I guess, to get started and see kind of how he takes to it.
Sure. So Maria would get in touch with you.
Okay.
She'll send you the price for the 6 week. Of course, you get the credit from this consult towards the program. She sends you the information for the collar. I recommend now, because he is going to be a big boy, trust me, you're going to want to have that collar.
Yeah.
Because we had a couple of people get another collar, same brand, just cheaper model. And actually one of them was a Rottweiler, it's an 80-90 pound dog. And then they're working with Enrique. And then he told me like, they didn't get the black edition, which is what I'm recommending for you.
Okay.
And then the other day the dog was like staring at someone and barking, and they were at 127, and the dog was, which is max power.
Yeah.
Because that collar is meant for a smaller dog.
Okay.
Okay, so then they saw firsthand, like, oh crap, you should have went with what she said.
Yeah. So Maria will send the exact.
Yes, just send the exact thing. The problem I think is because it's called the 1900S, but there's 3 different versions. There's the Wetlands, there's the Black Edition, and then there's a third one.
Okay.
So I think people are just searching, so we say Black Edition, you're gonna see it on the box that says Black Edition.
Okay.
And then that'll be the collar for a dog his size. Okay. In terms of like starting time stuff, Maria will work on that with you.
Okay.
And then she'll get you on the calendar, and then we'll go from there.
Cool.
Okay. And then once you get started, you can bring him with his collar as well. And then we'll start reinforcing anything that he's been learning here in daycare as well.
Yeah, how's he doing in daycare so far?
He's great.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's chill. He relaxes.
He loves other dogs, so I figured he'd take to it well.
Yeah, no, he plays really well. He does treadmill. No issues. He's a good dog.
Good. Yeah, he's been good. I think this will be really good for him.
Yeah, in my opinion, every dog, because it's the only tool that gives you 100%, or as close to 100% reliability as possible.
Yeah.
Because people always think like, oh, but my dog's not aggressive. I'm like, it's not about being aggressive or not, it's about reliability of, you know, the obedience that we teach.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I don't foresee any issues here. But if anything pops up, you know, we'll work through it.
Okay.
Okay? Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Don't wake the sleeping beast up.
If you have any other questions, you should just let us know.
Okay.
And then Maria will be in contact with you.
Okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Come on, Zay.
The other day, we have another Ziggy.
Oh, nice.
And then we have